Hey everyone, it's Kate from Sleep Time Consulting. I am here today to talk about ditching the dummy because I put up a question and said, what would you like me to talk about? Last week we talked about Christmas sleep tips, which hopefully you got the information from, and this week I'm going to talk about ditching the dummy because that was the other option. And all of these are kind of based on what I'm hearing in the questions that I get, what I'm talking to clients about. So I like to kind of give sort of a sense of the importance of the information that you need right now, and that's what I get a buzz from. So if you have a topic you want me to talk about, then please just give me a shout out and just drop me a message and I will happily put it as a topic to come up. And I'm considering doing a new kind of sleep series in the new year, probably around January time, just to help you get those basics, get it all on track for the new year, because that's one of the most important things. But today I am here to talk about the dummy. So I have an interesting relationship with a dummy personally, not a love-hate necessarily, but let me tell you about the good things about dummies. So dummies are brilliant at helping little ones to have a comfort of sorts. They are there, they're great if you've got a child that's got a really strong sort of suck reflex. So they're brilliant for newborns. So for the first few months of their life, they are great at kind of giving them something else to kind of have a suckle upon, because sometimes they just want to suck, and that's kind of fine. So dummies fulfill that role, and so it's very important that you recognise that they don't have to be such a negative thing. And I will always say, if it works for you, you don't need to change it. I'm not here about to tell you how to have what the perfect scenario is. The only right scenario is the one that's right for you, of course. And the dummy can play a part in your sleep. So if your child sleeps well, you've got a dummy, I am not telling you to take it away. It's when the dummy becomes problematic that we start to think about whether that's the sleep issue. I'll firstly just say that the Lullaby Trust have some information around some research that was done around SIDS and dummies. So please, I'll signpost you to them, have a read of them. They talk about, not giving a dummy until feeding is established to help that kind of to set up. And they also talk about when to take it away and their recommendations. So have a look. So I will talk about it in the basis of their recommendations being the foundation of everything else. So Lullaby Trust, go and have a look if you've got questions about that. But the dummy becomes a problem when, well, firstly, the obvious thing is if you're doing frequent dummy runs. So let's say you are settling your child, they're going down well, and then either they're waking up quite soon after they've gone down, or they are waking up multiple times. Normally it's in the early hours of the morning, and you're literally going in, putting the dummy back in, and then leaving again, and then you're going in again. Often it's within a sort of sleep cycle phase. So we're talking about that 45 minutes that babies have as sleep cycles, or even older kids as well. So they go to sleep with dummy, somewhere around their 45-minute cycle, it falls out. And then when they come to the end, which then they have this wakeful moment, which we've talked about before, then they're looking for that dummy to go back to sleep. And obviously they can't necessarily find it. And so that's when you get into this dummy run kind of scenario. There is a world, and I've seen it recommended by a few people, whereby you can pop dummies all around the cot, and I've seen, honestly, the most hilarious cots with like 20 dummies, so that any age baby can sort of find it. There is an age whereby they should be able to find their own dummy, and that's kind of can sometimes solve the problem, but it doesn't necessarily solve the reason why they're waking. So it depends on kind of what's going on with your dummy runs. How many are there? Is it just about the dummy? And you just need to work out whether it's kind of right for you. So that's when we start to think about, is the dummy kind of causing that kind of problem when those dummy runs are kind of happening super frequently. The other thing that I can start to see sometimes is that you'll find that a child that's got a dummy that's become a potential issue, let's say, is waking for a long period of time in the night. And this is what we had, right? So this is my story in short. My son was nearly 2 years old, he was. He'd wake like for an hour and a half twice a night. Oh my God, it was so tiring, completely exhausting. And we couldn't figure out why he wouldn't go back to sleep. He was napping okay in the day, it was all fine, but it was a dummy that woken him because it had fallen out. And because it was alerting him to the fact that he was awake, it meant that he couldn't go back to sleep because he was awake from it. So that can be a real sign as well that the dummy is causing the problem if they're awake for a long time. And so when we took the dummy away, he started sleeping better. If only we'd known. But that was my story, and obviously everyone's story is different. And you've got to think about kind of your individual setup and how it links in with the daytime as well. But that's the sort of the second thing that we look at. It's like long wake-ups in the night. And just, I often talk to people who say, actually, especially with the kind of the older children who can find the dummy in their cot space, that they go in and the child still has the dummy. And so what's interesting then is, like, unless you've got kind of eyes on the whole time, you don't necessarily know whether your child's dummy has fallen out and they've found it and they've put it back in again, or whether they've woken up for a different reason. Now, I think that's the case of what I do in that situation is try and work out, okay, what could be causing the sleep disturbances? And if it's a potential for other things, then we can talk about fixing those other things first. Is it bad daytime napping? Are they really dependent on something else potentially, and we need to kind of move away from that? And then is it the dummy, and actually is it worth getting rid of that to do it? So all those things can be in play. It can also be kind of an issue with short naps in the daytime as well, because again, they go to sleep with it, but they wake up after a short period of time because it's fallen out and they're not in deep enough sleep to sort of stay there. So all of those things there. So the most important thing that I've wanted to talk about was how to do it. Now, realistically, and I don't want to make this sound too simple, you just need to remove it and get it out of your existence. Now, when we did this, we did keep some hidden, but we never used them again. So the thing about dummies, and it's great, is that they're either there or they're not. So the confusion part isn't really there about whether you're kind of weaning them off it, because you can do things like cut holes in them, but it doesn't really work because the sucking's gone and they get frustrated with it. So my advice would just be to ditch it, to get rid of it. If you've got an older child, you can send it off to the dummy fairy, you can talk to them about it, you can reward great behaviour. But if you've got a younger child, just get rid of it and, go for your normal bedtime. If you find that you're meeting some resistance, whether that's older or younger children, then I would suggest what you do is you help them through it. And often you might need a couple of days, maybe 3 days maximum, to help navigate them into a world whereby the dummy isn't there. And then honestly, it can just go within that time. So the way to do it is really just to drop it. Help them through any kind of upset levels from it not being there. And then over 2 to 3 days, it should have gone from their memory. It's that quick and it's that easy. It's literally one of the easiest things you can fix from a real involved sleep prop. Definitely easier than potentially a rocking or feeding situation, because it's either there or it's not, and you can help them if you need to. Now, I had a couple of questions. The main ones were about how to phase it out, so I think I've covered that. The last one was about whether you have to get rid of it for the whole of the day. So can you use it for either bedtime and nighttime and not daytime, or the other way around? And you can flex it if you need to. And sometimes you might need the dummy in the day, for example, just because it makes your life easier. And therefore that's okay. As long as you're focusing on the setup of the day and how much sleep your little one is getting, then use the dummy to your advantage. But if you can take a step back and go, oh, actually I'm getting really short naps, it could be the dummy that's causing that. But there's definitely a world whereby you can drop it at night time and you can see the benefit through the night, and hopefully they'll just stop waking as much, especially in those early hours or for those long periods of time that I mentioned. But you can still use it in the day. But if you don't see improvements with your sleep in the day, then you might need to think about changing that around. It doesn't necessarily cause confusion, and you've got to just be aware of the impact that it's happening. So realistically, I think it's worth just kind of taking a step back. If you've got a dummy in play, you need to be thinking about how much it's interfering with your little one's sleep. Again, like I said at the beginning, if your sleep is all good, you don't need to change it. It's all kind of fine. But if you're having disrupted sleep and you've ticked a lot of the other boxes, then perhaps the dummy is going to be something that is worthwhile taking away so that you can see the benefit and see the improvement, and do it, support them. It will be gone within 2 or 3 days. Just had a question come in. So you've got a 23-month-old and an 8-month-old. Would you recommend just going cold turkey for both at the same time? Oh, good question. It depends on how much disruptive sleep you're having with both of them. I would suggest, if it's really bad, maybe, because it should only make it worse quite quickly. If one of them's okay-ish and the other one's not so great, then maybe just do one at a time. Fundamentally, you're either going to support them through it all at the beginning together, or you're going to make the process a bit longer by doing it separately. So it depends on what kind of works for you. I am sort of a rip the sticking plaster off kind of person, so it's almost like just go for it and do it, especially because you should see results quite quickly, but you do need to consider all the other things as well, not just kind of the dummies, so the environment and the feeding, the settling, the naps, etc. On that basis. So yeah, but that's very much it. So simply said, the dummy can be can cause sleep issues. It doesn't always, and if you feel that that's going to be, an issue for you, then maybe think about getting rid of it and just go for it. Oh, bit of feedback on this question. Both sleep is fine, to be honest, but just worried about my eldest having one. She's turning 2. Happy for my baby to have his dummy, but I know my toddler will take it from him. Oh yeah, that's going to be your problem, isn't it? So, they do talk about dental issues with dummies. I think that's something to talk to a dentist about, and sometimes there's a link in with speech. My son, who had the dummies, definitely developed a slower speech, but it came and it wasn't kind of an issue. So it's very much dependent. If you feel that because your older one is going to take the younger ones, then maybe that's the answer for you. But do what's right, because talk to the dentist, or maybe kind of do a bit of research on it. It's not a necessary thing, and if their sleep is okay, then is it worth it for you? But you will have to drop it at some point, probably, because they'll get to the age whereby it just doesn't feel that it's doing its job anymore. So consider all that. So yeah, hopefully that helps. But thank you very much for joining me today. I will be saving this up onto my grid so you can catch up with it, and sending out this and my summary on extra tips to my mailing list. So if you need to get involved with that, you can sign up at sleeptimeconsulting.co.uk, and you can find all of my services on there as well. And you can find out all about how to work with me and all the extra advice. If you go to the resources section, I put all my lives and my videos up there, and so you can see all the information you need. Thanks for joining me, and I'll take care. All right, bye-bye.